Hi, everyone. You're here. You're safe. We're experts now. We're here. I'm Rebecca, your host.
Oh, and I'm Jackie, your other host.
Yeah, I think
Sometimes
I was
known
going
as
to
the.
say either we're both co-hosts or we're both hosts. This episode we're both hosts.
I love that for us. I think we should switch off every other episode. Will be like a new title, and we'll just be like, now we're just speakers.
I'm
All we're doing is
CFO
speaking.
this episode.
I love that. That means I don't have to continue tallying all the
Oh,
financials.
you do such a great job with that. Well, this is a very exciting episode. We've got, it's an exciting week too. Has anything special been happening over on your end, Jackie?
Well,
Power
I mean,
outages,
that did
blood
happen.
drawings.
Both of those have. That's actually not what I was going to go with. Both of those did exist within the last 3 days. So no, okay. So as you know, I've been like stressed out. I think this is coming out on a future episode, but sometime in the future, I'm going to have some surgeries. It's kind of close to my brain, and we'll go through that in another episode. But I used to have a lot of really negative coping habits, like just a full plethora of them. You take your pick, right? And over the years, as I've become like a happier, healthy, fuller adult, I've had less and less negative coping mechanisms, which has really left me with spending. And not that I have put myself into some massive amount of debt. I'm totally fine, but I've just been like, I'm feeling really stressed out. Oh, I need this off Amazon. It's really an Amazon addiction, not a spending addiction.
Uh-oh, Jeff Bezos.
I know, damn it. So I realize that it may have gotten out of control recently because I do live in an apartment, and I bought a recessed fireplace that you like have to install into the wall, and then
I have so many questions. So many questions. An apartment fireplace, the DIY, install it
but
in
like
your
the
own
fake
rented
one with
unit.
the glass. And like my thought was like I just hang it on the wall, but like it never occurred to me that like
Hang
it
it
would
on the
have.
wall. I would just, is it freestanding, like a clawfoot
No, it's
standalone?
definitely not. Like it's like what you cut a hole into your wall and like place into your wall.
So it's almost like an oven or something, like,
Well,
or a
no, an
microwave,
oven's not in the wall.
You know how, like, if you would buy a microwave or something that you could add into a shelf unit or your wall.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a safe. Exactly like a safe. So it
And
arrived.
where is it now?
It's still in the box. I actually can see it from here. It's just, I don't know what to do with it because it came and I was like, it's really heavy. There's no way to hang it on the wall. And
No.
I was like, well, I could like lean it up against something. And then I realized that that's probably like a fire hazard. And then like my cats. And then it occurred to me that like, I never researched whether it was like gas or electric. So it needs to be plugged into something at some point.
It needs a power element. Yeah, it's not battery operated, I imagine.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I think the hanging it on the wall, I guess mounting it maybe. Would you say mounting it? Like brackets maybe?
That was like that. I mean, so that was really what I was thinking. I would like do it like a TV, but like again, that's not how these things are built. Okay, so
Can't task rabbit that one.
And like also like it's an apartment. Like what am I doing? So I tried to give it to my friend and she didn't want it, and now I don't really know what to do with it. So it's
any homeowners out there, if you're interested in a fireplace, hit us up.
No, actually, we are holding a We're Experts like
a garage, a rummage sale.
No, not that. Like a chair. No, no. I'm almost there.
Not an auction.
A raffle.
Not a charity, not an auction, not a garage sale. A raffle. These are premium items raffled off at a small donation fee.
Actually, if you just like and subscribe,
We can be
send
bribed. We can
one
be bribed.
lucky listener a brand new, still in the box,
Okay, let's make
installable
it
fireplace.
official. Let's say 30 days from now, anyone who has reviewed us in that time will raffle to pick the winner.
It's literally going to be my mom, who also lives in an apartment.
Oh, it's
We
rigged
should
the whole time. It's going to be your mom, no matter what.
we should actually just like not have any qualifying questions for this. So just any listener, just
Okay, great. We'll
it's like
look
a
at the
6-year-old.
analytics. Yeah,
Mhm.
little
We
Jimmy in
will then do
Massachusetts.
a deep dive on that individual, do a little background check, see what
Yeah, I mean, a little
their address.
spotlight, a little listener spotlight. We're here for you. That's our whole reason.
Okay, okay. Enough about my spending problems and raffling and using raffles to solve them. What are we talking about this week?
Ooh, we are talking about singing your own song.
Oh,
If you've ever
okay.
wanted to put pen to paper or compose, I feel like there's many other ways to compose than just physically writing. You just sing out, improvise a song. How do you actually make it into a song? What makes a song, and how do you compose with instruments, and how do you sing your own song? How do you write a song?
I feel like I've written poetry, which I could very easily like get on board with how to write like lyrics to a song. But I think the piece you have about, all the different musical instruments and like how do you even decide which ones are going to be there, right? Like, is it just because you have a band and those people are there, or I don't know.
I definitely get the sense that, I mean, obviously there's a language to it and musical notation exists and is very formatted. But even just metaphorically, symbolically, the idea of song in itself, I mean, I have some complicated relationships to singing in particular. I never grew up singing. I always felt like an outsider, and but it's such a human and even animal instinct. There's instances of frogs and crickets and things in nature that
Huskies howl. Yeah.
huskies, yeah, dogs, wolves,
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
a like a primal instinct of song. And yeah, I've also written some poetry that then it kind of, maybe it actually first came to me as like a little ditty in my brain, a little earworm.
I love that. No, I am quite the opposite. Like, I have always loved singing. I used to be way more into it and do it way more in my spare time when I was much younger, and acting and into all of that. But
you
even over
were
the years,
you were a
no,
musical theater person.
I was a musical theater person, and we'll stop there. But I think music has always been just so healing to me. Like, I have so many playlists that are like getting over a time in my life. Like, music is very easy for me to kind of mark what was happening in that period of my life, because I love so many different genres. Like, I pretty much will get down with anything as long as there's like a pop like a vibe to it. Like, I'm like, you're not gonna get me in some hardcore metal, you're not gonna get me some hardcore rap, but like, I like a poppy rap, I like poppy metal, I like, anything with a
Hmm.
fun beat. And so I think, recently when I've been stressed out, I've been going back to my punk days and listening to a lot of punk music, which I just find hilarious. But I think there's that aspect too, because I know different music genres have very different needs in how to write that, right? With like
That's
punk,
a
you're
great
gonna want a
point.
lot of like bass, and you're gonna want a lot of like this, and like kind of distorted, guitar. Whereas like jazz, you're gonna want something lighter. You're gonna want those more like kind of like, intimate instruments like the flute, or a saxophone. All those very like, I don't know. I find all of them very like
Hmm.
sexy, like vibey.
Woodwinds
Hey,
are sexy. I
Lizzo
think,
get down on a flute, the rest of us can too. Like, that woman is a goddess, and like,
what,
she
she
has,
played Andrew Jackson's flute or something.
it was definitely like a dead old man's flute, and it hadn't been played in like 100, pretty sure it was like a crystal, like 100%
Yeah,
like crystal
glass.
clear. Yeah, it was really beautiful actually. And Lizzo made it cool.
But
So
that's someone who's really at the top of their game. But I think there is an accessible piece to writing a song, and as I'm coming at it from that point of view of we have it as like something that lives within each person, and producing and composing and transposing music, I think we can get into the nitty gritty, especially with our guests. But I think just as a, an invitation to all our listeners and to myself and to you, Jackie, of getting, I don't know, finding the song in yourself. And that's going to be my jumping off point for myself.
Okay, yeah. What is, and you know me, like you very much want to go with the feeling and what inspired you, and I'm over here, what is the first step, and then where do I go from there? So
because you were talking about music theory, and I don't necessarily think you have to start from the genre. I think maybe it like just comes to you as any inspiration does, just maybe suddenly, and then you hear probably, I would say it's melody first, probably for me, but I don't know, maybe there's other things that you could start to build a song out of, like if you are like wanting to write a song deliberately because you're like, I want to uplift myself and I want something that's upbeat, or I want a rock anthem that just rocks my face off, and you just like brainstorm from that feeling.
So I have two different kind of theories. I think one, you always start with the bass, which is really like the melody, like the beat, right? Like what is
not the bass.
Like, well, like the bass is kind of sets the beat a lot of the time, right? Like the
drums. So literally the bass.
Yeah, like what is that kind of like pattern like this that like starts the music, right? Because it like, I think that feeds into melody. So I think that's one thing.
Tempo, rhythm.
Alternative, my thought process is that it depends on who you are, right? So if you're Rebecca and you play the banjo, right? Like you would probably start out with a banjo rhythm, right? And then think about what you would want to layer into it. Whereas I'm Jackie, I'm more of a singer. I would write the kind of the lyrics and the melody before I thought about bringing any musical instruments into it.
You know what's funny is when I've written a song for the banjo, I started with the lyrics and then I tried to make music fit around it. But other times when I've, had a song come in that just, is my own poetry or words or some little earworm that's coming into my mind, it's not necessarily words first. But maybe it is. Maybe it is. I think that's actually a good point. I think maybe like the story, like my brain is really tuned to storytelling. So I do think lyrics first.
Well, yeah, I was using you as an example because I knew you play banjo, right? But like, I think maybe if you didn't like to sing and you were a guitarist, right? Like I know a lot of guitar players and they just start picking along and they kind of create a melody that way, right? Where they don't even need lyrics, right? Because there's tons of just instrumental music as well. So
that's a good point, because if you're a musician, you're thinking from your point of view of your instrument, and it's the song really could be without the lyrics, Yeah.
And so I think that really like it comes from a perspective, right? And so I think that then you have to break it down to fundamentals, right? So if I'm writing, I'm going to just say I'm a guitarist here, right? Like, so I'm writing a song on the guitar, you probably come up with your one of two things, depends on how your inspiration comes to you. I would think if you're intentionally trying to write a song, you're going to come up with the bass, right? Like, so maybe you're like, the kind of the chorus kind of music. I don't know what that you call that, but like the kind of the sets that you play over and over again. Or if you're coming from a place of pure inspiration and just creativity, you might find that rift before you go into figuring out what the kind of like fundamentals of the song are.
We're going to need a music fundamentals class. We're going to need a little music 101 because you're saying bass, but you're not meaning like the literal bass instrument that is playing.
No, so now
bass
I'm
guitar.
saying bass. Earlier I was saying bass as the instrument. Now I'm saying like the bass foundation of the song.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to need to put subtitles at the bottom.
No, you're going to need to put translations at the bottom.
Just little definitions. Okay, now Jackie means bass, B-A-S-E, not B-A-S-S.
Yes, that's but now she's talking about a fish, so
and it's a bass. So
I went there. I regret that. I wholly apologize for going there.
I'm glad you did.
But I'm glad that I think this is going to be a very interesting topic for you and I to get schooled on.
Well, as you can tell, this is pretty similar to our ghost hunting episode where we were just like, I think you feel a vibe and then you
Honestly, yeah, it's like you just got to
follow it.
believe. You got to believe.
That's what you say when you don't know anything about the topic. You just gotta believe.
Well, I don't, yeah, breaking into song, it's like you got to have a little bit of imagination.
I agree with you though. So I think for me it comes from the storytelling, the imagination, the for me it's very like what I feel at that moment. Like as I've gotten older, I've gotten way more into poetry reading or writing, and that's very much a way how I express myself. And so I think with songwriting as well, like to me it would become from a place of how do I express what I'm trying to express. I very much like to use like euphemisms to explain my emotions. Like I'm not very good at like directly talking about them, but like when I'm in a place of like really high stress and depression and like just struggling, I find like a lot of like ice terms come in, so I imagine that
Ice
finding a way to,
terms?
yeah, like coldness and ice and
Ah,
like, like things that are like stone and things.
imagery.
Yeah. And so instead of saying like, oh, I feel, like so like depressed, I feel so heavy as a stone, right? Like my heart is like that. I feel
Stony.
cold, I
Yeah.
feel left outside. So I think for
Mm.
me,
That is
I
another
would
thing.
I would
Yeah.
come from that place. Yeah.
Yeah. And being someone who can pull those images through another medium, through whether it's words or song is something else, how they can sort of be universal, just like even as you were about to say, feeling depressed, feeling heavy as a stone. The word stony was already coming to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what are those shared impulses we have to these things that are kind of, I don't know, beyond just our basic words and as communication, how we make images through the sound of chords and
Yeah.
musicality and imagery through words and poetry. It's like magic. There's a little alchemy to it, you get out a little more than the ingredients.
Well, I think that's why I like talking like originally about like the genres, right? Like because I think that for me, I do not listen to any genre music like all the time. Like I very
Yeah.
much have genres for like how I feel or what I'm doing. Like I love pop music while I'm driving. Like I want to be awake. I want to feel alert. If I'm like trying to relax, some nice classical music, some jazz, right? Like if I'm cooking at home, just vibing, I'm gonna get some funk on, right? Like so
Yes.
I think if you are coming from that place of how do I if I am trying to express myself and certain feelings within myself, what pulls that out, right? Because in some senses, I may have a more jazz influenced song, very vibey. If I'm like trying to tell somebody I like them or something like that, whereas I'm pretty sure most of my depression poetry would translate better into punk songs. So
Yes. Ah, the love song. Are all songs essentially love songs?
no, some
Oh,
songs are. I think some songs are about like other feelings, but I think most positive songs are love songs. But I think there's a lot of songs about like loss and like,
but that's
like
love.
what well, yeah, I mean I think it's the void of love, yeah, right? Like it is the kind of evolution that love goes through. So, yeah.
So what do we need to write a song? What are the because I don't think words necessarily are required for it to be a song. I think
I think you need an instrument, whether that be
mhm,
your voice and creativity through lyrics like pen and paper, or an instrument that is tangible or something like that.
string instrument, yeah.
I think that's one thing that you need. I think you need a way to record, whether that be audio, written, or just your
Mm.
very clear memory of repetition, a way to record what you are creating through said instrument.
Yeah, like troubadours were the original recorders. They just knew the songs and kept them alive.
As a person,
Yeah.
I have no idea what this is. A
Or
troubadour?
a raconteur, I think is
I've
actually the
never
word.
heard
Troubadour
these.
now is you've made me doubt if that's right.
Well, if they are right, I think it's great. I've never heard of those.
Well,
That's
just like the traveling musician of feudal days,
I love it.
going around with
That's
their lute and their lyre.
loot, and you gotta loot. You gotta loot your life off. So weird. Somebody else mentioned a loot to me the other day. So like, I don't know why loots are circling around me, but it's a
Well,
thing.
we call that an elution.
Oh my gosh,
Okay,
Bex.
so you've got your
Sometimes it's a
song.
stretch.
you've you've been inspired to compose a song, set it down, put it to music, record
Hmm.
it, and you hope it's not a tree falling in the forest. You got to get someone to listen to it.
Well, yeah, I think that, yeah, you have to have a way to share it, right? So is it by word of mouth? Like, right, do I sing the song like these people of old
Directly
and
into people's faces.
just in their face? Or is it through, recording it, playing on the radio? Is it writing it and sharing it? Because I think there's a lot of songwriters out there that aren't famous musicians, right? So they write the lyrics and the music and then they share it out
Mm.
so other artists can share it. Because I think some people, just their passion is to write the music, not performance.
Is it that open of a sharing though? Wouldn't it just be you would write a song and then sell it to someone to like
Well, I think
paying
it's like,
for? I don't know. Actually, she writes her own music, doesn't she?
I think it depends on who you are. Like let's, for example, talk about a jingle in a commercial, right? Like
Oh,
your
true.
aim in that jingle is to get people to
Mm.
can, like, first, like, meow mix meow mix, like,
Oh my
like,
god.
right,
Not a
like,
sponsor.
no, but like that's what they want you to do, is to get it stuck in your
That's
head. And
another that would be another process probably because then it's not even a question of your own inspiration necessarily. It's like this is a product. This is to sell something, which I guess is what a song is to to send a message, some kind of message.
you're selling the performance is what you're selling, right? Because a lot of the time when we're hearing music, we've paid for it one way or another. Whether we're the listener and we're listening to ads, we've paid
Mm.
for it that way. We've downloaded the music and bought it, right? However we've done it, we're paying for the performance to see it live. We're paying for that performance one way or another.
But that's
So I think,
capitalism. And this, you know what? Ironically, songs are about, well, not all songs, but I feel like the spirit of music is to dismantle.
well, like, think about that.
I
Like,
don't
if
know
you
what
look at
that,
it,
not capitalism, but
well, if you look at it that way, like, you think about the people that are denying capitalism, living a different lifestyle. Maybe they're making their money as like one of those like street performers, right? And they are creating their own music and they are actually giving it away for free. That performance is free, and the hopes that somebody returns funds to them, whatever way that be, right? So there are people who can deny capitalism and find a way to like provide their music and like kind of more of like a crowdfunding sense. Like, here it is, whether you want it or not. I would love for you to give me money for it. That would be fantastic, but I'm going to give it freely.
yeah, I guess I'm trying to get at something metaphoric, this idea that the idea of a song is the idea of liberation, letting loose,
Yeah.
extroverting out, emitting
Yeah.
something. And in that idea that music is somehow free of the money aspect. But of course, everyone, you got to make money and sometimes you got to sell out and
We've
not
monetized
necessarily
everything
sell
as
out, but
society. There is literally nothing that you can't buy in one way or another, whether it be legal or not legal, or like possible or possible yet. Like, you
commerce.
So I'm with you. I don't love capitalism. I don't have a better option right now that would be workable. But I do think, yeah, like,
But I think that's a
music
part of
is
it
a choice.
as being a songwriter. What's your relationship to, continuing to be inspired and a pure sense of artistry up against the demands of a marketplace?
Yeah, yeah. All right. What else do we need to make this song the We're Experts song?
I think I'm excited to find out. I think our guest expert's going to have a lot to tell us about the ins and outs of singing your own song.
Oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait to learn how to do this because we had very few guesses.
I know. Well, let's hope that we can compose ourselves.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you got to enjoy the break. You got to get your snacks and your little drinks, and you got your little setup here. We are back to explore with our expert. Bex, who do we have today?
This is an exciting episode. Yes, I'm Rebecca, back from my break, fully hydrated. Thanks, Jackie. We are joined with our guest, Gracie Martin, singer, songwriter, artist extraordinaire. Gracie, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am Gracie Martin, and yes, I'm a singer songwriter. I also do songwriting coaching. Having started this year. I love to help people find their creativity through song in particular. But I work in a very genre fluid style that I came up with called fantasy folk pop. And I released my first EP that I wrote, recorded, produced 3 songs, 3 of the 5 songs on myself. 2 songs were co-productions with a friend of mine, Sambarello. And that came out in 2017. And since then, I've been writing songs for all types of things. I'm currently recording an album right now that I wrote since moving to LA. And yeah, I'm a songwriter.
I gotta start with fantasy folk pop.
Yeah.
Is what you said is the genre. I don't know if I know this genre, but I feel like I do by the explanation, and I kind of love it.
Yeah,
I didn't know I needed that.
Yes, well, I did make it up, so I would hope that this was your first time hearing about it. But yeah, I'm such a fan of the concept of genre fluidity in general. I think genre and gender are just getting more and more fluid
Gender.
Maybe they've always been fluid, right? Maybe they've always been fluid, and it's all just
remove the categories.
Right?
We're catching up,
right? Yeah.
Okay, I love this because I didn't know that we were going to hit on the social issues today, but I'm glad we did. You know,
I just have this very clear image of seeing a recent backyard concert of Gracie's, and as she makes a grand dramatic entrance in a very folksy, beautiful, flowing dress ensemble on a stair set in a twinkly lit backyard, a little dog came up to just be serenaded by her, and I was like, this is fantasy folk pop. Like, this is it.
That really is it. Yeah, that's perfect.
Wow, that is just
like when the animals are also in tune with you, you know this is music and this is fantasy folk
also
pop.
You need to go to like the Potter festivals, the Harry, like those things, like they are gonna be all over it. There's like Potter, like Comic-Con, but like Potter.
Like, Gracie, you've been to those, haven't you?
no, I'm
Harry
just saying
Potter.
I'm not affiliating with that property, actually, unfortunately.
Yeah, speaking of gender politics.
Speaking of me being an absolutely insufferable person who's very up to date with social justice stuff, I unfortunately couldn't do that. But I am reading the Hunger Games right now, so if they have a Hunger Games thing, I'll do that.
They have to. They gotta have something for everybody.
Totally. I'm very much like, ooh, I gotta, or they have His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman.
I am literally watching season 3 right now. That is wild.
Oh my god, I'm obsessed with those books, obsessed with that series. Oh, so good. But yes, I actually, that's such a like fantasy of mine, is to like be, I don't know, weirdly affiliated within like fandom and genre, and like, I don't know, to just be a bard of nerds. It just sounds my absolute dream. Yeah.
Let's start a D&D game.
God. Wait, a D&D game around like songwriting would be
bards only?
Bards only?
Bards? Okay, my brother is going to be stoked. He has been talking about this for a really long time.
Talk about genre bending. You could have like all these different clashing, harmonizing genres. I'm here for it.
Wow, that would be really cool, actually.
And I'll just be like the record executive.
It's a very important job. We really do need
That's what you call the dungeon master, the record.
The A&R guy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of us already being totally conflating with our musical terms, you got a chance to hear Jackie and I fumbling around in the dark of musical notation and songwriting. Can you tell us how we did?
I feel like I've been like, I don't know, bearing the lead, because I don't know how to not give you guys a really high score, because like, my personal philosophy of songwriting is very like, there's just glut of right answers most of the time. It's just like, it does depend on who you are and what instrument you play or what kind of, song you have in your heart. It is such a like diverse and personalized process that I like resist telling anybody that there is like a specific way and like a certain set of things that you need to do to write a song. And like all the things that you're throwing out, even though like I don't know, I could tell that some of the, like, maybe the terminology you were grasping for was just like unfamiliar, and it was like, ooh, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but so much of it was just like, well, and actually I love that you guys were already getting into the nitty gritty of this very philosophical question about, like, yes, there is music theory and there is like a way to create and craft music by the book, by rules, using like things that people have studied and taught in school. But that is like usually not the way that the most impactful music is made. Like, a lot of the most impactful pop music is made really intuitively, but it can be made technically as well. But music is this thing that actually kind of defies capitalism. It defies like skill and expertise and elitism. But at the same time, it's like rough because it defies capitalism in, like, you know, not really making you any money either. Like, it's hard to make money off of it. But I don't know. Yeah, I do see it as this really kind of magical art form that is so impossible to kind of pin down in a specific like expert level I don't know, just like total methodology way that's just like set in stone. Because I'm a completely self-taught songwriter. I've been like classically trained and have lots of experience singing and interacting with music technically that way, but I don't have any degree in music stuff, and I just kind of taught myself how to use Ableton and all of that stuff. And I don't know, I think that's one of the things I love about it, is that it's so like, it can be so accessible.
It really can. Like, I feel like that is like one of the joys of like a lot of arts. And like, I think music is one that's such an easy kind of avenue, right? Like, you can use your voice, you can hum, you can whistle. And then like, I was listening to something that was like talking about somebody who was like a sound creator, a score for movies or whatever. And they were talking about how he had to make the sound of a jet, but you can't actually record the sound of a jet because it's too loud. So you'd have to use a different item that no one would think of, and that makes the sound of what you would think a jet, and that's what they put in the movie. And I think it just like that concept alone, that you can create music out of pretty much anything that you find, and it may not be the traditional instrument that you are thinking of or would like access to, but it's accessible in the sense that you can find a twig, you know, maybe not a twig, but like a piece of wood, and like drill it yourself and make a flute if you really want to. Like, it is accessible in that way.
That's original
Yeah,
music. That's like, well, that also is a Red Hot Chili Peppers line.
Wait, what? What is?
Isn't it like,
get a twig and drill a hole in it and make a flute?
No, it's like,
you know that
music, two sticks, bang it in the nature, whatever he said.
Yeah, no, that's not that really music.
I prefer my lyric.
Yes, it's that song, exactly. Use two sticks. Oh no, you know what it is? Use two sticks to make it in the nature.
Yeah. Ever since moving to LA, like listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers in the car, it's so like it hits so good. It's just the perfect thing.
Where are you from?
I'm from Rochester, New York.
Yeah, okay, definitely hit. Chili Peppers on the West Coast hits different than on the East Coast.
Yes, it's a lot different in my car, driving through like palm trees and stuff, than in the passenger seat of like my sister's boyfriend's car going to like community college, which is like where I used to listen to them as a teenager.
That's an inspiring story. You should make that into a song.
Well, Red Hot Chili Peppers aside, I love the spirit of this giving music back to the people. I mean, and folk music. That's, you know, I'm kind of like drawing a parallel there of not only the way the music sounds, like the sound of folk music, but the idea of music being about folks, for people. And I think you have such an interesting perspective, because you do have that technical application and skill, but yeah, there is that sort of like magical alchemical area of music that it has this kind of nebulous like inspiration factor that can be both intimidating and like really you know, joyous, like unique experience to have in life. And yeah, I'm interested to hear your approach on where you start for yourself as a songwriter, and then maybe you can also get into how you help draw songs out of other people.
Okay, before we get into that, what's the number?
Oh
I
my
gotta
gosh.
know.
Oh,
We got a rainbow unicorn fever dream, Jackie.
I didn't like it.
yeah.
I want to know the number.
A scale of 1 to 10. 10 being the
Yeah.
best.
I mean, I feel like I'm like, I know, I feel like I'd be condescending to give you guys a 10. I don't I don't want to
Don't
like
give
make
us
it
a
easy
10.
for you guys,
We need room
right? You know?
we need room to grow.
Yeah. So maybe I'll say like a 9 because I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. It's I like who the hell am I to be like, I don't know. You because it's just such a like amorphous, like expansive topic in my opinion.
That is
I
so
don't
funny
know.
because I'm shy very infrequently in life. I'm like, you can't tell me how to do my art right. But when it comes specifically to music, I'm like, you can tell me it's wrong.
Oh yeah, no, that's like that is just not well that's just for like me in private because like in my opinion it's like I don't know, music, it's here. You can only really say it's bad like to you, like based on your own personal tastes of like what you like for music. So I don't know. Like if I'm helping somebody else write a song, it's kind of an asshole move to be like, wow, that's like
That's actually bad. Yeah. So, okay, if we're your students, right, and we come in and what is your kind of starting point? Where do we start, the master class?
I love to take a temperature and kind of get to know each other. And my favorite way to do that is to ask my clients, students, whatever, to make a playlist a playlist that's called Now That's What I Call Songwriting. And it's any song that, to you're just like, I don't know. Something about this writing is just like speaks to me so deeply. I feel the example that I give is like for me, Joni Mitchell's writing is like if I woke up every single day of my life just trying to write an album as good as Blue and I never even got close, I would have lived a really happy life. I would have lived such a fulfilling life and finding that joy in the process. And I think a part of easing past the existential discomfort of things like that is finding that artistry that already exists that you can tap into and really plug yourself in, because that comes back to the whole thing where it's like, yeah, I agree that I'm an expert, but I'm also like always want to be equally a like fan amateur energy at the same time, because I think that that's just really that like tightrope that I always want to be walking on. So I always try to like connect that it's oh my god, this is such a like teacher like phrase for me to say, but it's like when there's an artist who you've always been listening to their music and you've always just been like, oh, I resonate. I see it as this like this like bridge of meaning that you're like collaborating on with the artist, and by resonating you're already starting to like write your own music by like walking that bridge like towards them in that meaning. And yeah, I don't know, it's like this whole thing, it's like about collaboration and interpretation and like resonance with people's words, and that even just resonating and feeling like you really understand the meaning of something to you, I feel like you're already songwriting when you do that. Yeah.
I feel like I totally get that. Like, because I think in poetry, for example, like I'm a very, like, I euphemisms, like I'm very strong in using that. And there is a line that I always kind of have to walk of like, is this clear that I'm talking about my feeling? When I think I talk about this in part 1, like coldness and depression, right? Like that's like a tie I make a lot of the time, or like sadness and coldness. Like, and so I think you have to walk that line. If I write a poem about an icicle and just purely about the icicle, is the listener going to understand my meaning in that? Or do I need to give them more context? Do I need to give them more information and to make them able to understand that? It makes so much sense. It's like, I always have a really hard time when someone's like, oh, this classical music, doesn't it give you like this feeling? I I struggle with that sometimes. Like, I think there's a lot that it does pull out of me emotionally, but sometimes people are like, oh, this arc right here really makes me feel, excited or whatever. And I struggle to get that emotional tie. And I think that's really true to like, how do you bridge that gap right there?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also am a big fan of the fact that like all art is always going to like transform once it is being perceived by other people. And that is like the ever shifting nature of things. And yeah, I try not to, with my own writing, especially with the stuff I've been writing recently, I have definitely been I don't know, it's interesting being in much more of a flow state of like almost even like trusting songs that I don't really know what I'm talking about really yet, but it's just like it's flowing and I can tell that I really need to get it out. The song that I'm going to put out next is very much like that, and it's like I don't know, it's almost like out of body a little bit, but but yeah, I don't know, it's one of these things where like it's very topsy-turvy and like wiggly because I don't know, it's just like you don't always have to be super clear with your meanings. There's so much room.
Yeah.
Okay, so we start with the inspiration, which Bex is
Yeah.
always right on, and I don't love it. And
I was actually thinking like the word frequency that came up for me of like I like that as like this basic building block of like that is kind of like when things are bubbling up. There's like or resonance, sorry, like resonating with that, and like that's where kind of things begin. But then how do they build to that where there's harmonizing and where it feels like a song and it feels like a clear
Totally
entity?
Yeah, because that's like the starting off point I like to have when I'm getting to know clients. But like for my personal process, and I know like the process that's gonna like really get people to that point of like you downloaded Ableton and you're recording everything and stuff.
Is that like the Photoshop of music?
No, I don't know. Maybe it's a level below Photoshop. I think it's a little bit like it's the user-friendly one that all the people who aren't like cool, like I know not cool, crusty dudes in music studios, like
promo code we're experts now.
But for my personal process, it's like, yeah, I feel your resistance, Jackie, about the like, oh, it always has to start with the inspiration or it has to start with for me a certain thing, because I don't think it's always the same thing that comes up for me and turns into a song that I really like. There's like definitely a type. No, I mean, so for me personally, I'm like a like intense emotion factory in so many, like my life experience, just the way I'm put together, Scorpio moon, so many things.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Just like I have always had to just write initially to just have an outlet for them, and then I needed to write songs to really like almost like exercise demons, it feels like sometimes, like to get something out of me. So it always, for me, a lot of the, well, I mean, it changes, but definitely started from a really intuitive flow, like emotional place. And I even have like the type of thing that'll start where I just, and I don't know, I'm just going through it, I'm really processing something, and I just free write, and I like stumble upon it, maybe even months later, and I'll read it, and it's
Do you have
Huh?
that's my question. Do you have a melody, like if when you're free writing it down, do you have a melody in mind,
No.
or are you just
Well,
like writing lyrics? Because like I think that's my question. How do you get from that free writing phase into the song creation?
Yeah. So it's like different at different times, because like sometimes, and songwriters talk about this, I am visited by lyric melody together. Like I had this experience, the Christmas that that Beatles documentary came out. This is so cliche, but like I watched it with my family, and it was like, I always say it was like the perfect combination of very interesting and very boring. actually, that documentary, because people in a recording studio for a long, that's boring stuff if you're not like a music person, even if they are the Beatles. But it was just the perfect place for my brain, and I like went upstairs and wrote one of my favorite songs I have written, just period. And it was just kind of both like all the lyrics and the melody coming together, and I don't know, I was possessed with this diligence to just figure out what it was supposed to be. But that's very rare, I have to say. That's like not the typical experience, especially for me with those things where I'm like, oh, it's the free write, I'm really like letting it out and stuff. A lot of times, yeah, I'll like re-encounter it maybe even months later, and I like a lot of the times I feel a little bit like, I can't believe this came out of me. Like, who the hell wrote this? And it'll like feel really new to me. And yeah, sometimes that will like inspire the song and everything, or I'll just be like, holy shit, like what a line you just wrote. And so like that'll happen. But then also sometimes like I have a song that's going to be on my album that I started with the melodies and stuff because I was just driving around. I was listening to like a Belle and Sebastian like suggested channel. Like it wasn't even a Belle and Sebastian song or whatever, but I just like really liked the chord progression, and I just found myself like singing to it and realizing I wanted to like make that and stuff. And so I don't know, there really are just like so many ways in, which is like, I know it's like I struggle with this in my coaching. I'm very ADHD, and I'm always like, oh my god, and we could do it this way, or we can do it this way, or we can do it this way. Like I almost see it like cooking and stuff. Like it's not only that like you get all the ingredients in place. Like, yeah, oh, some songs it's a fun little afternoon and you're just like baking some cookies, you get the box mix or whatever, like I don't know, you just have a nice little day and you write a song. Sometimes it's like you are fermenting the kimchi buried in your backyard for 3 full moons, you dig it up, that's just one element of the song. And then you need to craft everything else for it. It's just like song by song, it's a very different thing, which is like I have to imagine a little frustrating of like wanting to kind of like systematize it.
Well, I'm a task-oriented person. So like every time I'm like, well, if I'm going to write a song, I need a reason to write a song. And then I know the reason that I have to write the song, and then I can be inspired on how I get there. Like I want to have a tight little package, because my whole mind is like, well, it just comes to you. Well, personally, fuck that. Okay. I'm sorry. I totally respect your like everything you do, but like I couldn't just live my life waiting for inspiration. Like I have so much respect for creatives because I am not that patient. I try to force things. And then like the other piece that you're like, oh, well, like you add some stuff in and it comes in later. I'm like, well, then how do you know it's done? Like, how do you know, like, this song doesn't need, like, 14 cowbells in it, right? Like, how do you stop at, like, I got the melody. Okay, well, now, is that just one instrument? Do you add in 7 instruments? Do you only add in what you have available? I'm
so funny. As you're, like, going through all this, I'm thinking, I like that you brought the cooking metaphor. That was really interesting and illuminated some things for me. I was thinking of this metaphor of, like, different kinds of rivers. Like, you have to just step into the stream and like feel the things that are coming. And sometimes you're like, actually today I prefer a little babbling brook, or like, and then like, as you're moving through, you're like, oh, I'm going to have to like build the vessel now that I've like, all the things are rushing into me. And sometimes you're like, oh, I have this like little raft from the last stream that I was in, but this is actually a much bigger river and I need a bigger boat for this. And I need to, or maybe this is a babbling brook and it's not meant to be ridden down at all. It's meant to just be sat in and enjoyed. And I know that's very like metaphor-y, but I think of it too the same way when I think of my creative pursuits. I have to get into clown brain. Like I just have to start putting things out there, because you can't change them. You can't refine them until they're out there.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that is like a very sometimes creating in the dark process. That's
Brave.
uncomfortable for logical brains.
Yeah.
That's brave though.
And I gotta
That's,
say,
like, brave.
if you think it might need 14 cowbells, the only way to find out is to put the cowbells in. And a lot of, I self-produce like a good deal of my music, but even when I am working with my co-producers I've worked with, who are all, they do like they are professionally trained in all this stuff, it is still like, oh yeah, maybe we'll put the 14 cowbells in that. Oh yeah, we'll spend hours adding an element, and then we'll sit back and we'll listen, and we'll be like, no,
I would be
I know. But see, the thing is, I think the key thing for me is I coming from theater. This is such a dream to me because it's not theater.
I'm triggered.
Because I'm like, I have so much time to work on it, and when I'm done working on it, it's not gonna disappear. It's gonna be right.
I might like that more. I actually might like that it disappears. Yeah, I do. I mean, even this podcast makes me nervous. I'm like, oh my God, the stupid things I say all of the time are going to be monument. No, that's not the word I'm thinking of. Like this right now, this moment right now, this is going to be living in history.
Exact right word. I will say though, to add in one thing, I am also like, I feel you on the like, oh my God, how do I know when it's done? I famously take forever to put my songs out. Like I take years and years and years to put my songs out because I am just like, yeah, I don't know how many cowbells in these.
Well, and that's okay. So we got our music or our lyrics. We have our melody.
Yeah. How
do you start structuring in instruments, or do you just go with one? What's the process there?
Well, so something that I do think is a music theory thing that is important to talk about that you guys were kind of missing from your but I'm also like it doesn't have to have this. This is very helpful to have a chord progression. I don't know if you've heard of this term.
You mentioned that earlier. I was wondering what that means.
Yes, it is.
It's like a rhythm, right?
No, actually, it is. It has more to do with the melody and the key that the song is in, and if it's in a major key, if it's in a minor key,
like a C flat.
Yeah, that's a chord. That can be a chord.
So that's not a key. Is not a chord.
They use a lot of the same, like, so there's like the notes in the scale, and those signify a lot of things. Like you can be playing in the key of C minor, but you can also be playing a C minor chord, which, yeah, right? So when I bring this up to be like, all of my explanations of music theory stuff are like the most dumbed down because I hate music theory, and it makes me feel like
I'm gonna need you to dumb it down some more.
It makes me feel like math. Like I just gotta cry.
I know.
Oh my God.
I love math.
2 C flats equal a C minor.
Oh no. Yeah, no, and it's not even like that. I mean, it's like if I try to break it down more, I'm gonna sound really stupid.
I mean, that's the level I needed at.
Yeah, because it's like,
but you have your you have your container.
Yeah, because it's like so granular. Because it's like a collection of notes makes a chord, and then because that's all the strings that you're playing on the guitar, and so that's a bunch of notes that are harmonizing together to make a chord, and then you are taking a few different chords to put them together to create the chord progression that is, sometimes it's very like, oh, these chord progressions we're playing in the key of this, but then sometimes, and this is where I am not smart enough to really understand stuff like this really well, that it's like, oh, you're playing these chords, ooh, but if you're like actually playing it in this key and you go to the 4 here, it's going to resolve into F sharp, and that's going to be really cool. That is very impressive to me, and I am pretending like I know how that works right now, and I do not, and that's why I like love working with co-producers and collaborators and instrumentalists who did go to school, because that is a big, because to move on into like, we have the melody, we have the chords, you've, invested in your interface and your mic and stuff, and you're going to record your song. I play guitar and baritone ukulele, but I would never qualify myself as like an amazing instrumentalist. I'm like a serviceable instrumentalist for myself, for my voice. My voice is my main instrument. And so I do tons and tons of collaborating, and I get to work with so many amazing instrumentalists. And it's always like a really fun collaboration that's halfway between like asking them like, oh, what do you hear on this track, and telling them like things that I envision. But and I hope that the people who have worked for me are not like worked with me like aren't driven crazy by this, but I definitely give them feedback that is like not technical. It is very like, oh, I really want that part to kind of wiggle around, and I don't know, it's always just like language that is not technical. But yeah, collaboration, I would say, is the key to like the whole, oh my gosh, how do we get all of these pieces together?
I think that's a great point, right? Like, I think that's true in so many different creative like aspects, right? Like there's like the theater or any kind of performance, you're going to have to collaborate with someone or something. And sometimes that's like the performer and the audience, right? Like sometimes that's the feedback that you need.
Yes, Jack.
So I think that's such a great thing to hit on, right? Like it's storytelling, it's collaboration, it's building that bridge to the interpretation of what you're trying to say and the meaning that you're trying to get across. I feel like that's like, I hate to say like the soul of music, but I feel like those are a lot of like the pieces of the soul of music, right? Like how do I be successful when I create a song instead of trying to fit it into a box of like, okay, write the hook first, right?
Yeah.
I think knowing that it's like it's about these intangible items, it's about being present for it.
Yeah. And like it is this like leap of faith thing too, because I think with the bridge metaphor, you're going to drive yourself crazy if you want to write the song that's the complete bridge over the river of people don't know what's going on in your head and your creativity. It's like I will say that like, yeah, people who are amazing pop writers and write for pop stars and things like that are much more in the business of like, I am going to write something that is going to hit people in exactly the way that I am planning to. And that is like, to me, a much more technical skill that has to do with I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of like working in a style, it's like doing like a Shakespeare play or whatever. It just feels like very like you are kind of checking off the boxes and like really delivering something that is supposed to be in this way. But I don't know. But it's also weird because it's also the thing about pop music is that there's like working pop artists, and oh my god, this isn't really a tangent, but like the reason why so much good pop music comes out of Sweden, and like Max Martin is like one of the most influential pop writers of our time, is because like Sweden invested a lot of like public education money in programs specifically for like American style pop music. That's why ABBA, that's why like oh my god, how do you pronounce her name? Not Tuvalu, and Tuvalu. Max Martin, and all of these people you see coming out of Sweden. It's because they have like invested in the fact that like they see pop music as like classical music, as something that you want to like invest the country's like art budget into. And like I just find that so interesting because
about the arts,
Swedes be writing amazing pop music. They're so good at it. But I will say like with it's like even in that hyper technical thing with pop music and stuff, there is still that magic and that leap of faith thing of like, I need to, great example to tie it off of like the bridge of meaning. It doesn't always mean like, I'm going to say all this stuff and you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, no, you're going to just get this feeling. Cause like, I want it that way. Max Martin, like Backstreet Boys song, such a great example because like, what the hell is that song about? Like you never get to a there about
Tell me why.
What's actually happening. Right. And they realized that after they wrote the lyrics for it, because he spoke Swedish. It's like a Swedish person coming up with English words that sound good in the song and that feel good to sing. and they were kind of like, man, like this doesn't really mean anything. Let's like write it so it means something. And they wrote it like that. This is a cowboy pal moment. They wrote it like that. And then they were like, this is not as good. This is not as fun to sing. We need to be just randomly being like, tell me why. Like, you know? But I think
I thought about Hit Me Baby One More Time.
Yeah.
That hit Me Baby One More Time was supposed to mean call me back, but we don't need it to mean that to know how it makes us feel.
Yeah. And like, yeah, it's just like, I feel like some of the best lyrics are written by people who have English as a second language. Because there's such potency,
more fluidity.
Yeah.
That yearning to reach the light is kind of the thing that feels exciting.
Well, what are we missing? How do we top off the song before Bex and I try to give this
record deal?
Yeah, how do we get a record deal?
Unfortunately, I do think to get a record deal, you have to be like young and hot and have a lot of followers and not a lot of interest in like your like well-being. Having a nice life. I don't know. I am a very staunchly like independent type person. The longer I'm in LA, the more I'm like, ooh.
I'm over here coming out of South Korea as well too, that those contracts can be so demanding and life-threatening and
absolutely.
Jeopardizing and just
yeah.
Well, I think we talked about this in the intimacy coordinator episode as well, right? Like, I think the music industry, a lot of the time it's feast or famine, right? Like if you want the contract, you have to live to a certain standard. Like look what we did to Britney Spears, for example, a very clear one, and so many other young people who were exposed to that fame at such a young age and don't know how and when they can say no.
Yeah.
So I think, as much as it's a joke or it's kind of pure sadness, what you said, I think there's a lot of truth to that. There's a sexuality that sells, and that's what the mass public want. I think those tides are starting to change, but will we see it affect our generation the way that we'd like to? We don't know, but TBD, I guess. But I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like I also think it's not even as simple as like, oh, there's going to be this big expectation to be famous or anything. Because it's just like once you start getting in bed with an industry, especially with your music, with the music industry, it becomes not about music immediately. It just becomes about being in debt to a record label, trying to make as much money as you can. And like, yeah, you're not going to be thinking, oh, how do I write like an amazing song that's going to resonate with tons of people? You're going to be thinking, how do I don't know.
So then as an independent artist, what are what's the fulfillment of song?
I mean,
through your own
in my opinion, it's the process. That's why I'm still doing this. Because I famously wrote a song called Dreams Die that goes, your dreams die when they come true. Because in my opinion, songwriting and writing a successful song is, I don't know, it's like it's kind of between you and the song, like in a big way. But it is like a little amorphous too, because like, I love what you said about it. It's a collaboration with the audience, even when you are performing it. Because I think it all depends on like, again, I'm so sorry, who you are, what you were inspired to do. Because like, I think it's very, capitalism poisoned and like a very sad way to look at your music. If you look at it as a thing of like, oh, this song will only be complete once it's, on the radio or XYZ. I will say, like, from a real nuts and bolts place, there are like, to release your music and put it on Spotify and do all of the things to be where I am. All of that is very, very doable, and there are actionable things you can do to do that. And people who want like a person to help them go through that process should hire me.
Yes,
that, actually,
we're gonna tell them to hire you. They should hire you
We should
because
hire you.
artists need to be supported 100,000%.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, like, I think for me, why I could never be a creative type, I say with parentheses, is that fear, right? Like, I panic not knowing exactly how much I'm going to make, how I'm going to make it, where my career's going, what my 5-year goal is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people don't appreciate the fact that, like, we have a lot of people out there who are contributing something to the world, right? 100 years ago, you would have probably been able to, like, make it as a singer just doing your trade, right? But with, like, the commercialization and the kind of, like, we have this, like, oh, you're either a superstar or you are nobody kind of, like, reality that we live in. Our creatives aren't supported. They can't get the lives that they have. Like, they have to find new ways. And I think we're losing a lot of the greatest artists, right? Like, touching back on what we were just saying about, like, the people having to sell a part of the soul. Well, now you're getting the most, the people who are in the majority that are the performers that we're, consuming are the people who sold their souls in some way or another, right? Like, what happened to our local artists? So hire them. They have other jobs.
Yeah, they actually didn't go anywhere. I would actually like push back on your statement a little bit because I have a lot of hope for the way music looks right now. And I know a lot of musicians hate TikTok and hate like social media and what that has meant. But and this is also coming from a place of privilege in me, but like I really love that now I 100 years ago would not have been able to do what I'm doing. I would not be able to be self-recording. It would be contingent on me getting into a room full of men who record for me. And that has been the case for a really, 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 really long time. It's kind of still is the case. But, all of the local artists, the indie artists, like I can't even start naming people, but they're just like, and that's like the other beautiful thing about like starting to get into music is that it is just such a community type of artistry. You just like get to meet so many amazing musicians. And I don't know, I feel like if you're really engaged with your community, you're just kind of like, yeah, it is fucked up. It is messed up. And like the money is fucked and it's always going to be really fucked. And I'm so like, I could just argue with myself honestly all day about it because like I go back and forth about it. But I always come back to like when I see people harping about like, oh, it's like people being like, oh man, it's so lame that like TikTok is making songs shorter. It's getting rid of bridges. Like you have to have a 2-minute song that has a hook right away and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, sure, to be that kind of song. But but like what you pay attention to matters, especially on TikTok. And the 2 songs that I was getting targeted the most on TikTok last year was the new Carly Rae Jepsen song, Loneliest Time, which went viral with the part of the song that is the bridge. The bridge of the song went viral. It's a 5-minute song. It's an amazing song. And it went viral. Like, even though it's like, the album didn't sell the way that, the music executives that are making her feel like she's a failure when she's an unbelievably influential artist to so many people. And then this other artist
is defined differently.
And then this other artist, Hemlock Springs, with that song Girlfriend, like they're just a totally like independent artist who's making things on their own. Like, I don't know if you guys are on TikTok, but it's just like those are the things that I noticed that were really like picking up steam in a way that was just like, I don't know, that's really exciting. And I like feel like the artists that are coming up and really like creating culture that's really like impacting people are kind of smaller artists. And I don't know.
Well, I'm not on social media, so I just learned a whole lot about what's happening. And I think those are some great points, right? Like I didn't think about the fact that, like if you're on social media, a lot more people have an opportunity to hear you than you would have had 100 years ago, right? So I think that's super, super interesting. All right.
Are you ready to join? Are you ready to get into the music biz, Jackie? You think we've got what it takes?
I feel like my score is going to go down, but okay. Okay.
It starts with the hum inside.
It starts with the kind of person that you are.
Oh, okay. I like
and
that.
If you're
That's
a Bex, it might start with a hum.
A pull, some sort of pull, sometimes it's like getting out of the way of an idea. Like it feels like it's not even mine. It's just divine inspiration.
I feel like for me, it's me crying alone, writing poetry, and then just some like distorted metal chords in the background is where I start. I don't listen to that type of music, but I kind of feel like that's the type of music I would create. So
I listen to it.
And there's like that idea of leap of faith kept coming up, and I think that's going to happen like a lot through this process. That leap of faith of I'm feeling the like heavy instrumentals, and that's where I'm going to go with this. I'm feeling the leap of faith of I want this thing that's already inside of me to come out, or I want to find something that's missing and not inside of me right now. It's like this kind of leap of faith beginning to get things churning, and then feeling out if there's like a genre or an instrument that you already have, or
the two C's. Okay, that's what I'm calling them now. The two C's,
C's?
Connections and collaborations.
Okay.
You can take that, Gracie. All right. But I think you're connecting to the audience, and you're connecting to the music. You're connecting to that leap of faith that Bex just said we made. And then you're collaborating with either other artists, or you're collaborating.
Yeah, or with a mentor, like such as, Gracie, who's someone who could lead you with like their kind of experience. And
then we need a chord progression.
There's another C.
Yes, the 3 C's. Connections, collaborations, and chord progressions.
Well, yeah, you reach a point with the song where it becomes as defined or not defined as you want it to be, if you're going to go fully towards that, the technical version of a song, or make some creative leaps. But at some point you have to put it out in the world and make it, I mean, maybe have to is strong when we're talking about something like art, but there's a point where you can record it with your Ableton, your software, you've got your interface, you've learned to apply technique to your instrument, to whatever degree, and you produce it.
And then we label it,
and we know that it's possible to produce it, like in many different kinds of ways. That could could be through a more commercial way, but there's now independent avenues, which again I go back to, you're probably going to have to do some more research and ask your friends and ask your mentor and find out what your options are.
Little R&D can get up in that songwriting action.
Yeah.
The 3 C's and R&D. Okay. I'm going to make you a chart. You're going to love it. Okay.
I love this.
Have we improved? Oh, wait, Bex, anything else to add?
And then I think the ultimate collaboration with your audience, who's going to perceive it.
And the cowbells.
And that'll be, it's like next
if they work,
little
right?
iteration. Yeah. Maybe you decide you need just 13 cowbells.
Yeah. That last one
number.
Over the moon.
It was over the top. Okay. Can we get a 10 now? Or
I mean, it's like nails on a chalkboard for me to be asked to like assign numbers to things like this. I hate.
Can you give us an emotion?
I mean, I have realized that I don't like numbers. Like I'm a song writer because I like words.
I will take an emotion or a color.
I mean, okay, so I'm gonna give you like this very like weird answer, because like I would say like my emotional response to you saying CC R&D, we've got the chart, is like my boner's gone. Like that just dries up
like the triple C's.
That just dries up all the juices for me. It's just like feels so corporate, and I don't want to feel like I'm in a a corporate.
Well, joke's on you, because this was an interview, and I'm a music producer, and
no,
it's all over now.
And it was over when I already said I don't want to have a record deal.
Damn it!
But I was going to caveat everything I was saying to say that my personal feelings about the things that you say don't fucking matter. They don't matter. Because if you are the songwriter, you are going to create the chart. You are going to do the CC, the R&D, and that's going to get your boner going. That's going to be everything for you. And
I'll be the best corporate songwriter. Just like you made yours up, I do corporate pop. It's,
fantasy corporate pop. I love that.
And dystopian corporate pop.
And that makes me excited because I'm like, wow, I could never make that. I want to hear what you come up with. Like, I love
it's like
hearing
just
about that.
Slow hum of voices in the background, and then like water dripping, and then just like a guttural scream, and then the song ends.
I'm excited by that.
I know, this is, honestly, I've given you the 10 now. I'll just give you the 10 because, like, that is even coming back, because when we were going back over things and talking about the chord progression, I was like, man, we don't actually, there's a lot of noise musicians out there that are going to be like, what are you talking about? We don't need a chord progression. I'm going to be like, yeah, you're right. We don't. It can be the dripping water and the scream and the mumbling voices.
One of my friends
sounds hot.
Loves EDM, and I remember one time it was like a real headbangery EDM, as he said, and he was just like, just wait for it, and then like there's literally like the whole song stops and there's like a water drop, and then he's just like, yes, and I was like,
you're like, I
don't get it.
I'm still waiting.
Shoegazy wall of sound, weird, dissonant music. So I appreciate you making those caveats.
Yeah.
And we got the 10, Bex. We got the 10.
And that is a beautiful gift because, like my own issues that I have with accessing music or feeling permission to do music and song, I think is something that as I'm, an adult, that's something that I'm so glad I get to work through, because that is, it's a human right. It's this beautiful.
Join the fantasy corporate pop band, Bex. We're going on the road.
What I'm trying to say is I'm joining the fantasy pop band.
I love it.
No, you were supposed to join my corporate one.
Oh, it's a fantasy corporate pop band.
Okay. We're incorporating music. Just what music
too
needs.
late. It's baby, it's been incorporated. They've been. You ever heard of Spotify?
We love you, Spotify.
What is Spotify? No,
We're just on kidding. Spotify, Jackie.
Please don't take me off.
You have to do a lot to get taken off of Spotify.
No.
You have to.
We are on our
anti-vax or something. And you have to be anti-vax and have a lot of listeners.
Not willing to be anti-vax. That's where I draw the line. All right.
Oh my God.
Any last words for us, Gracie?
No, I have a song coming out on Bandcamp Friday in April. You'll find out about it if you follow me on.
The song is called Friday?
No, I'm not letting you know what the songs. Wait, am I? I don't know. No, I'm not. I'm going to announce it special on my Instagram that you can follow me on, which is at Gracie_so beautiful. That's me.
I love that. And it's Gracie with an IE, right?
Yes, it is Gracie with an IE. I also do songwriting coaching. I like to call myself kind of like a song doula. Like, you got something in there, you don't know how to get it out. I want to help you get it out, because it's scary. It's like I feel like the biggest thing that we've really zeroed in on here is that it's like, yeah, there's all these things that you can do, but the hardest part is the fact that you have to sit down and try to sing a song that doesn't exist.
I am dead serious. I might put you in touch with my sister-in-law and my niece, because I feel like she loves music and sometimes she doesn't know how to express herself, and songwriting might be the way for her. So I'm gonna have her check it out, and then I'll give 5 stars or whatever I do.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and it's also, I have done it before where people buy the session as a gift for their friend who is like a little, because there's so many people who sing. This was me for a while. I was writing so many songs in secrecy in my dorm room, and it's like people would be like, "Oh, I heard you singing." I'd be like, "Oh no!" And then like, "No, and like it is so scary to think about sharing that with people. But sometimes you do need that external person to kind of be like, "Hey, I gifted you this thing because you're Like, because
That's a great gift.
you are so annoying that you always say that you're not a songwriter. You are obviously such a songwriter, right? So I very much encourage, like, kindly, you know, pushing your friends over the cliff, doing the leap of faith for them. Not literally, but, you know.
I'll do it literally. All right.
Well, speaking of pushing people over the cliff, Jackie, just like we practiced, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're experts now. Wow.
Okay.
This has been a Just Being Better Media production.